Director, could you initiate our meeting, please?
Yep, I just started the record button, and we are good to go with the roll call from Damien. Can you do the roll call, please?
All right. Donald Abbott.
Here.
Naomi Dewar.
Here.
And Vaughn Hartung.
Here.
May I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. On to public comment. Mr. Clerk, is there any public comment?
We have not received any public comments this
All
item.
right, thank you so much. On to the business of our day. We're looking for discussion and possible direction to the staff on proposed legislation and legislative items for this 2021 session. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today we have this item to talk about what's going on in the legislature, those bills that our lobbyist Tom Clark has identified. And actually, I'd like to just go ahead and turn it over to Tom to take us into what's happening down in Carson.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tom Clark with Tom Clark Solutions. We will definitely be done in 28 minutes,
Okay,
Madam
cool.
Chair. And you'll see that I believe you have the subscription by tag list that of the bills that we're tracking and the BDRs that we're tracking. You'll also notice that it's considerably shorter than the first time that we presented this list. And just to walk through how that happens, we throw everything at this that we think might be pertinent to the operations of the agency. So what you saw that first time, once those bills got heard, we either got comments from the sponsors of the bill or we watched the hearings. We took bills off that weren't really relevant to the agency so that we didn't waste a lot of time talking about stuff. And a lot of those you'll probably hear from your other, local governments agencies, Tumwa, county, city, those kinds of things. If there is something that you would like an additional layer of attention to, I'm more than happy to put them on the list.
Okay, well, what I'd like to ask is our director to share a screen and put those bills up.
You got it.
Okay, and if you can enlarge that too, Jeremy.
You got it.
Keep going. Keep going. You're good. Thank
How
you.
about that one? Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you. All right, back to you, Mr. Clark.
Great. Just to give you a quick sense of how things are happening down here in Carson City, the building remains closed. Whether that is going to change at any time soon is highly unlikely. There is a report that the legislators and most of the staff have received their vaccinations, but that's the first round. So they're waiting for the second round. We suspect, at least the rumor mill suspects, that by April 15th is when a decision would be made to allow us lobbyists and the general public to come into the building. I will have to say that it's very frustrating in the way that we are. I wish that the state legislature would adopt the same system that your director has adopted, and that this is a much better way to testify. We are relegated to 2 minutes on the phone only, unless we have special permission from the chair of each of the committees, and they have been very tight with the permissions to allow folks to testify, whether it be in support or in opposition of particular pieces of legislation. So it's a much different environment than what we're used to, but we're making do with what we have, and we'll see if that environment changes.
And to that end, Mr. Clark, just a quick question. Have they finalized that lobbyist registration bill, or is that still in process?
AB 110 was passed out of committee. There were a few Republicans that voted against it. And just as a historical note, what AB 110 does is it changes the definition of a lobbyist from having to be in the building, personally advocating and lobbying, to just having communication with legislators. So that will open the door for lobbyist registration. It's passed out of committee. We expect to see it on the floor of the assembly. And of course, it'll pass over to the Senate and then be signed. But they're really—
So maybe a week, you're thinking?
Oh, that would be very optimistic to see anything.
Okay. All right. Well, please carry on.
I would love for that. I think that the tool of lobbyist registration is important from a transparency perspective, and also just from a legislators like to know who it is that the different lobbyists represent, and that lobbyist list presents them with that. We do our best to, in conversations and in communications, let them know who it is that we're representing in case they have a question regarding one of our clients. So,
Mr.
hopefully-
Clerk, I have one more question on that.
Yes, Madam Chair.
When you said they gave you 2 minutes to speak, what about the proponents of a bill? Do they show up on screen? Do they have longer? What rules apply?
For the record, Tom Clark, it's up to each of the individual chairs of the different committees. So there's a different set of rules for every committee, whether it be Government Affairs, Commerce and Labor, Judiciary, Natural Resources. If you are a proponent of a bill and it's been the bill sponsor requests of the chairman that say I am the chief proponent of a piece of legislation, the bill sponsor would request from the chair that I be on video and be able to speak for an indefinite amount of time, depending on the chair's prerogative. So the proponents of the bill typically will get an opportunity to be on video to present the legislation and to go through it.
Okay.
Anybody else that you have in support would then have to be relegated to the phone call, dial in,
That's fine.
no video.
I just wanted to know how it's working. Okay, thank you. Why don't you turn your attention to these bills, please?
Great. AB 87 is the first one on the list. It was actually heard at 8 o'clock this morning. It will come off of the list. Simply what AB 87 does is when you have a utility easement, and the bill was brought forward by Southern Nevada. It's typically an administrative function for the municipalities when they have these types of easements or vacations that occur. What this bill does is say that if somebody has concerns, then it gets a public hearing. And everybody is, I say everybody, most of the governments in Southern Nevada are in support of the legislation, as well as the utility companies and others. So there was no opposition to the bill. There was an amendment presented by Assemblywoman Nguyen, the sponsor of the bill. That amendment will probably get adopted when it goes to work session next week. So it doesn't have a huge effect, and it has no effect on your agency. So it will drop to the bottom of the list next time around. The fun bill on our list is AB 90. And I've done quite a bit of due diligence on this, trying to understand clearly what the genesis of it is. And I will tell you that it's most likely the plan that blockchain has and all of the types of projects that are going on in the more rural counties. In essence, what this bill does is it says, if a project is considered to be a new term, a project of inter-county significance. And if you look at the different sections of the bill, there's a list of what determines what a project of inter-county significance is. The number of employees being 938. Not sure where they got that number, right? Housing units, hotel accommodations. If it is determined that the project is of inter-county significance, any county in the state can require the county where the project is based to allow them to go through a process of due diligence and approve the project before the county of origination allows that project to go forward. There are a lot of concerns with this. Well, we look at it and say, sure, this is all focused on projects in Story County. The reality of it is Story County could come back and say, any project that meets this standard in Washoe County also has to go through this process.
Right.
So,
And I saw mining projects on there.
mining projects, energy projects. There's a number of different, types of projects that can be affected. And then could be true as well that existing projects might fall under this. So if you're in the process of going through a special use permit, or any county determines that it's going to be impacted by that project, they could file for the position of inter-county significance, which is going to slow down a lot of the developments, which is, sometimes good. But there's talk of amending it already significantly. One of those amendments will deal with, is the county that is requesting the determination of inter-county significance contiguous. so that if, you don't have White Pine telling Washoe County that project's going to have significant effect on us, and force this, process to be pursued. AB 90 is not scheduled for a hearing yet. I have reached out to Chelsea Capurro from the city of Reno, their lobbyist, because there was a communication from Kelly Mullen from the city of Reno asking if the agency was going to intervene or participate. And I have not heard back from Chelsea yet, but hopefully I will. This may be one where you will want to weigh in. It'll all be determined by more information and more due diligence that I can do on your behalf to figure out just exactly who's in support, who's opposed, and even if it moves forward. It doesn't surprise me that it hasn't been scheduled for a hearing yet. Teresa Benitez Thompson, our Assemblywoman, is the sponsor of the bill. I reached out to her yesterday on a number of different matters and have not heard back. So,
Mr. Hartung.
So thank you, Madam Chair. So Tom, sort of the genesis of this goes back, you're correct, it's Story County, but it really didn't have to do with governmental impact fees. It had to do with specifically RTC impact fees, where Story County was creating all of these jobs and creating a huge impact on the transportation system, specifically I-80. And there was no money to pay for any of that. And so everybody's like, who's on the hook for improving I-80? Should it be the state? Should it be Washoe County? Should it be Story County? So that, and this was originally, if you go back and look, I don't know whether it was the last session or the session before, Skip Daly introduced an original bill, Tom, that kind of outlined some of this stuff, but those impact fees were designed for agencies, not governments, because RTC is not truly, a government. It's just an agency that has that operates under an interlocal agreement. So that's kind of the genesis, and that's there. I mean, there's some ways to deal with this, but it specifically had to do with transportation infrastructure and really nothing else originally. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and Mr. Abbott, do you have any comments on this? No?
I was muted. Sorry. I'm the worst millennial. No, I'm good right now.
Okay. I guess I'll just say you ask a question here. Is TMRPA going to weigh in? I mean, what do my colleagues feel? I mean, obviously it will depend on the contours of the bill, but and I guess we'll just take a wait and see at this time. What do you all think?
I think wait and see. And
Yeah, I want to see the final language personally. I want to see, and Tom, perhaps you can have discussions with Teresa about changing certain local governments to perhaps governmental agencies or agencies that have to do with that deal with infrastructure, because that's really where we get impacted. And the other thing is Story County has been very clear that they do not want residential. And so all of that residential has been piled into City of Sparks, City of Reno, and unincorporated Washoe County, which is a very, very expensive endeavor. Residential is tough to maintain under the current tax structure. And so that's, and so it goes back to, it could go back to schools, impact fee for schools, and et cetera. There's a whole bunch of things that could come under this that I mean, it just needs to be fleshed out, in my opinion.
So, okay, so I think we're on a major watch with this one, and we'll see where it goes. I want to mention, you said infrastructure, but schools are also a huge concern, and especially on the operating side. Since we got the infrastructure side fixed, we can build schools, but operating the schools is becoming more of a problem. So many impacts. Thank you, Vaughn. How about SB 11? Oh, excuse me. Yes.
Hi, Jessica Prunny for the record, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to note that the factors to determine whether in the bill as it currently exists, whether a project is of inter-county significance are the exact same factors in our statutes for projects of regional significance.
So that's good. Thank you for bringing that up, because what you're saying is those projects might need to come to TMRPA.
If they're within TMRPA's authority and jurisdiction, in other words, within Washoe County, they're going to go to TMRPA as a PRS. And then depending on what happens here, there might be something else there. But
Well, that is a very good point. And it's just like today, you said within our purview. Well, nobody has purview. RTC doesn't have it. No agency has purview in Story County or to address those kind of issues. So, okay, appreciate that.
And maybe, Madam Chair, maybe Tom, what we do is try to guide this more towards a similar scenario of impact fees that occur when a business builds in any other large area where they pay impact fees up to RTC and others, just because there's a genuine impact in the region. So maybe that's the better direction to take this, as opposed to specifically with local governmental agencies. I don't know how it's gonna look.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's definitely one that I'm going to be involved with as it moves forward, and we'll keep you posted. And I'll, Jeremy and I will have conversations once it gets a hearing and it's heard, and leading up to that, a lot more information comes out once it actually gets scheduled for a hearing. And hopefully I'll have a conversation with Ms. Benitez Thompson too on the bill.
So Tom too, and I don't want to belabor this, look up what Skip had, and I don't know the numbers and I'm sorry, and kind of see what the appetite was at the time in the legislature to, because I know the builders were looking at it. I mean, there was a whole bunch of agencies that were concerned with the language that Skip had originally. So just be aware that I think that's the genesis of this.
Great. Senate Bill 11 is up for hearing today at 1 o'clock, as well as Senate Bill 73. I have not, SB 11 is the City of Reno's bill. Madam Chair, if you have some insight, I have not dove into that one. I've been very focused on Senate Bill 73 as far as.
Yes. I mean, I can explain this. Coming up for hearing today at 1, I believe, and as well as SB 73, the one right after. SB 11, I think I've explained, but just in case, if the county declines to enact their I never know, Vaughn, if it's 1% or 1 cent GST authority that's remaining, that it's possible that could be assigned to the City of Reno. And we've listed out several things that we would use that for, so people know, what it could be used for. A lot of that relates to, relates to affordable housing, homeless issues, those kind of things, but it's not solely for that. I mean, it's for general government services, so it could be other types of things, and all that will come out in the hearing. And so, we're really, the county's in first position on this, and based on their decisions, we'll move forward. And we understand if they don't want to utilize it, totally understand. I think, Vaughn, your group, the commission has taken a position that you don't want to utilize it, maybe at a previous vote this year.
That's correct. And the reason is that it's disproportional. I can afford to pay more money on registering my car, but someone who is living at the edge, or seniors who cannot afford to even pay for their meds, and it comes between food and meds, this is going to disproportionately affect them. So, and this is only one group. It's a group of drivers. Where's the delta between a tax on drivers and general operations? So that's why we've opposed it. Thank you.
And I didn't know you had officially opposed it, but I understand what you're saying, and that makes some sense. I mean, on the countervailing side, I guess you could say that people living at the edge either may not have vehicles, or they may have, less expensive vehicles that they're registering versus a expensive SUV or something, maybe a basic car. And maybe that's how this works, but great points. So that's where we are. I think there's a hearing on it today at the Senate Revenue today at 1 p.m. Right. And then SB 73, we spoke about. This is an effort to address our extremely underfunded parks and recreation activities. We really have lost our ability to support what we have. We laid off 135 employees at the beginning of the pandemic, temporary parks employees that manage things like pools and after school programs and those kind of things. We just can't keep up. Everybody knows it. It started in the recession, probably before that, but they were pretty much shredded as relative to parks and, public safety. This would allow, the legislature would allow us to establish a committee to evaluate the needs and to also evaluate the potential funding sources, come to a conclusion, put a ballot question together, and put that on for the next election. So we'll see where it goes. I think there's a number of people that are coming out to support it. That's what I've heard, but I don't know whether it's letters or testimony or what. You may have heard something different, Mr. Clark, but regardless, we're just here on how this might affect regional planning. And, I think in terms of regional planning, it's just another thing that you guys track in terms of infrastructure, resources, support for our growth, those kind of things.
So,
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, can I ask a
Please.
question? Is
Of course.
this an intent to go after flood management authorities?
No. So I was very clear that, from my perspective, that they needed to take flood management off their possible list of funding. And the staff told me that they did research and they are taking flood management off. I mean, I told them that from day one. I said, what is this even doing on here? And then number two, because they did research, they found everything you and I already know about the bond commitments, the need for additional funds, flood management, et cetera. I mean, that just made no sense to me. I also recommended that they delete the sales tax option. I said that is a non-starter for me. And they agreed. So when I comment today on this bill, I will probably reference those two things, just making it clear. So
Thank you for that
for
clarification.
Yeah. I don't know. When LCB writes up these things, they, as Tom knows, they do their thing. And then you're like fighting with them. Now, that's not what we meant, but I was very clear with our staff. Like I could not even support the bill if they included those revenue sources as possible. So, okay, next one.
Thank you, Madam
Yes.
Chair. Again, Tom Clark for the record. That was an excellent synopsis of Senate Bill 73. I will tell you that I mentioned it in our last meeting. It's personal to me. I got a 13-year-old swimmer who it's challenging to find lanes. So any type of process that may create new revenue for parks and recreational activities is important. And you're spot on too. I heard recently that the sales tax piece is coming off, and that also the flood control piece is coming
Yeah,
off. So-
perfect. So I may not have to say much about it. They get it.
Oh, don't ever trust that they get it, Madam Chair.
Well, okay, I'll say something about it. But anyway, okay.
And so just to, the rest of the list includes the bill draft requests that are out there. Again, we do not have a lot of information on each of these individual requests. They come up. I will tell you that in conversations with members of all of the respective caucuses, they are cutting these bill draft requests faster than they're introducing them, just because of the essence of time. We have a deadline on the Ides of March for all personal legislative bill drafts to be introduced as bills in their respective houses. So, we'll have some interesting late nights on the floors of the Senate and the Assembly leading up to that point. But I truly suspect that March 16th, this list will be even shorter than what it is, and that we will see that a lot of the bill draft requests that have been submitted by legislators individually will go away. And with that, Mr. Smith and Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation, unless there happens to be a question.
I do have a question. What is BDR 38-742? Do we know?
Let's see.
It's about urban planning and public health.
Do not know, but Assemblywoman Tadas brought this forward, and we'll see if it gets legs. And if I see, this is the frustrating thing is I would just walk out of my office, go down to the building, find her and ask her.
Right.
But if I can get some additional information on that, I definitely will.
All right. And it would also be good to know what BDR 26718 is on governing public lands, unless that is like we want them all to go to the state and local jurisdictions, or is it something else?
Okay.
All right, well, let me ask our committee, do we have questions about these or other bills you may have heard about that aren't on the list yet?
No,
And no.
I'm good to go.
Okay,
Nice to have a conversation about stuff and at least know what we're looking at. So
right. Okay, well, with that, we'll close this, unless, do you need direction, Mr. Clark, on anything?
I do not. Thank you, Madam Chair. This suggestions you've already made on those two bill draft requests, Senate Bill 11 and AB 90, I have noted and will report back to Jeremy soon.
Yeah, make sure on 90, if we have to at TMRPA start reviewing, because these will trip, our there's same thresholds as our legal counsel point out. That will increase workload. We need to make sure that we can fund that. And is Story County now going to make a participation agreement with us to fund those things, review, just like Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County do. They support our budget here to do these reviews. So it's a question that, it could be a financial impact on us that we're not prepared for. I do understand that the impacts are to Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County, but what it might do is drive up Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County's need to increase their funding share for TMRPA to review stuff in Story County, unless Story County participates. So I would think that would be the biggest thing. What do my colleagues think potentially?
Madam Chair. So yeah, no, I agree with you. And what may end up happening is that regional becomes truly a regional body where we have members from other counties that serve on regional and get to vote, just like we do. And they pay their pro rata share and those things that are triggered as projects of regional significance, as Ms. Prunty has appropriately pointed out. Then we figure out what the impact is and basically go from there. And that actually is not, that's a vision I had when I first got elected and a rub that I had going back years and years and years with regional planning, that it's not truly regional.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for those comments. Let me ask for any reports from our director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing really at this time, just that we'll watch this closely. As you guys have indicated, we've been reading the bill, and tracking it with Tom's help. And if something comes up, we may need to use one of our reserve Thursdays to discuss it. Otherwise, we'd be planning to meet, I believe it would be April 1st would be our next meeting.
Cool.
10 a.m.
All right. In about a month. Okay. Anything from our legal counsel?
No, Madam Chair, Jessica Prunty for the record. And as always, I'm available to Mr. Clark and Director Smith if they want legal eyes on anything.
Okay. And request for future agenda items. We good? I think we're good. I'll close that item. And then public comment. And I want to point out, even though these previous items were agendized for possible action, I was not notified by our clerk that there was anybody wanting to make public comment. So now we're going to move on to general public comment. And let me ask again, if there is any public comment.
You are correct. There's none for previous items and there's none for this one either.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll close that out. Written correspondence, Mr. Director. Should I call you Dr. Director?
Dr. Director, yeah, we have none, with the exception of we did receive an email, which I could share, from Kelly Mullen, City of Reno, just asking if we're planning to comment on AB 90. So
okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. We'll close out that item and we're now up to adjournment.
Okay.
Okay, motion.
Done. So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Yes, very good. Well, I so declare us adjourned. Thank you so much. And we will see you again on April 1st, if not sooner, right? Okay.
Okay.
Good job, Tom. Thank you so much for helping us.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Take it easy.